Trustees. First item on our agenda is the invocation of pledge of allegiance. So, Mr. King.
All right, let's pray. Dear and Father, we thank you for bringing us here, Lord. We thank you for giving us the opportunity to help this district, to help the children. We just ask you to be with all the teachers, administrators, the staff. And Lord, we also ask you to be with everybody on election night tonight, Lord. May we have all good results. And Lord, just be with our district. First in your name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Key. Without objection, the consent agenda will stand approved tonight. Then we move to item 4 is continued discussion on report cards.
Yes, sir. We just wanted to make absolutely certain. We spent a lot of time at the last board meeting going through report cards, talking about individual report cards and that sort of thing. We gave you a lot of information. We don't want to rehash all that, but we do want to make sure that we got anything covered that needed to be before we move on. So with that said, if there's something that we need to clarify or that you got specific concerns about, we'll either answer or try to get you answers.
Yes, sir. Question. I don't want to say in preparation, you know they come around about the same time every year. I guess my thought is there anything that, or question would be, is there anything for the coming year? What can we do to better prepare?
Right. Well, I think that's a great question, and what we've been told is they'll come out earlier this next year, that they will come out in September. Now, those folks that have been on the board for a long time remember back in the days when report cards supposedly started coming out in September, and then they postponed it to October, and then somewhere along November. But we've been told it'll be a September date that the report card will come out this next year. Right now, there's some things that can be done that can give us a projection that both high schools, what they should be doing is looking at their 9GR list. The groups of kids that came into the 9th grade 4 years ago. That
What is called
9GR.
Oh, okay.
That's the cohort of kids that should be graduating 4 years from the time they come into the 9th grade. And that'll have lots of different kids on it. You'll have a list. Dixon and I were looking at some of those today, and you got as many as 40, maybe even 50% of the kids that started out at the schools that over a 4-year period or somewhere else. What they need to do is look at their 9GR, find out the kids who are in place right now, the kids who need remediation, make sure that they have what they need to graduate in June. Make sure that the pieces of the report card, like college ready, career ready, those are things that you can check off. You know that, get those checked out of the way. Kids that aren't there, where are they? Do we have the documentation that they transferred to another school? Do we have the documentation they went to another country? Do we have documentation that they are going to be a 4-year graduate? So those are the kind of things we can do now. In addition to that, whatever our end of course and a report card, the building of a report card comes over a 4-year period of time, because a kid will take the end of course exam maybe in the 9th grade. Some of them take it in the 8th grade if it's English 1 or Algebra 1. Now English 2 will be the new end of course score, but that score follows that kid till they graduate. So I think we're at the point in time where we need to stop about where we are. The kids who we legitimately don't think can make a C or better on the end of course exam, we need to schedule them into a year-long course with remediation to get them to the point where a 70 is a C. That changes it. That's 25% of the points on the report card right there that's just associated within, of course, testing in English language arts and algebra. So those are the kinds of things that we can do on the front end, particularly at the high school level, that we need to be prepared for so we know what's coming.
And saying that, you know, the points you just touched on, you know, that you said, I mean, how are we checking off to ensure that those are being done? And you said this is at our high schools?
That's at the high school level.
Okay. All of this?
Now, grades 3 through 8, 70% of the points they get are directly associated with English language arts and mathematics. So reading, writing, and arithmetic are the most important things that we can do when we start talking grades 3 through 8. And that's the focus of the report card. You can have a direct association with the report card points and some form of English language arts or mathematics for 70% of it. So if we were to acquire just those points, we're in better shape than any of our schools were. Ma'am.
So like in the elementary grades, and I don't know this, maybe this is jump in here. Is there like a certain amount of requirement of time to be spent on certain subjects? I mean, I know in the high school you have like a period, you know, like type of thing. And I ask that because if 70% of our grades are going to be based on reading, writing, and arithmetic, why don't we put 70% of our instructional day kind of geared towards that, with a little bit over here in social studies, a little bit in science, and obviously the related arts?
The old DMP that was in place for years doesn't exist as such anymore. It's still floating around out there, and a lot of people still go back to it. But what we've asked, and when I went to Congaree last year, Frida went with me, we shocked a lot of people because my idea was teach reading, writing, and arithmetic, and if they send the social studies and science police over here, I'll take credit for it. But a better example for that is if we can teach reading through the curriculum, that it's easy to tie social studies and high interest, low material for elementary kids to social studies. And you live in a community that's got such a history that spans a long amount of time. You can talk about from almost pre-Columbian days in this general area to now, and have history that kids can touch. So reading those kinds of things in social studies, you get content, you get comprehension, you get vocabulary, those sorts of things. With your science, you get prefixes, suffixes, root words, and then of course the math on that. Matter of fact, Freya kind of laughed at me. She's a math person, I'm not, but I had the PE teacher out there. He teach mathematics. If their biggest problem is multiplication tables, put them in the gym and shoot basketball. If you got one kid that makes 5 free throws, you got 5. If you put 2 out there that makes 5, then that's 10. So what we've tried to ask them to do is teach across the curriculum with the focus on reading, language arts, and mathematics. So yes and no. But our biggest focus is we don't want to abandon science and social studies because there's 10 points associated with that. And we don't want them totally ignorant in 3rd grade of South Carolina history. But if it's done well, they can incorporate something that's high interest and still get the same thing accomplished. But I'm firmly in belief that if we'll focus on those 3 things from the moment we get kids in school, we graduate them in 12th grade, our report card will be 100% better.
Then my second question to improve on the high school would be, could we not do something like pre-test or post-test, pre-high school test, the 8th graders, their last couple of days of 8th grade, get an idea of those kids that we think would be on target to do well after just one block of English 1 or one block of Algebra 1. Those kids go on straight into English 1 or Algebra 1, and then the other kids who maybe wouldn't pre-test like they might do well, we might then put them into pre-Algebra 1 and pre-English 1 so that we don't actually test them until they have a full year.
Well, what we're talking about doing and what I've asked the high schools to look at now is stop right now, because any kid that is not online to make a C or better, and then of course exam to let them take it at the end of the first semester hurts the kid and hurts us. When all we have to do is change the schedule and make it a year-long course. We've got a dashboard on every kid in the district, so basically we can tell you what the probability of a kid actually passing Algebra 1 or English 1 is. We've had numerous discussions, and what I'd like to see is the fact, and we talked about this, the fact that we have English 1 and Algebra 1 for those kids who are not apt to do very well, run it the entire year, regroup them as they need to, because the ultimate goal would be for them to pass and make an A, but the reality is if we can get them to make a 70, that's a C. That's a C on the end of the course exam. The kid does better. They don't have to retake the class. They don't have to make up time. The school functions well, and it is a problem, but it's not insurmountable. I mean, changing schedules at Christmas time to regroup kids used to be a commonplace kind of thing. So the short answer is yes, we can do that before they ever go in, but not only that, with our schedule, we've got the ability to stop right now and look at where kids are, because the end of 9 weeks now is equivalent to a semester. Regroup them right now, run them through the entire year, and they don't take the end of course exam to the end of the spring, which gives them more time, gives us more time, and probably will improve. And even if we only get 1 or 2, it's better than 0.
We've also built our schedule where we can run what we refer to as a skinny, which is having it all year long for about 45 minutes. And so we're looking at trying to make sure that happens this coming year as well. Something that would help also.
So potentially, we can save some of these high school scores this year, we think.
We can.
Yeah,
But
we
they don't
won't
really
see it
count.
until-
We won't see it for 3 or 4
I mean,
years.
that's
We're
the-
already done for the
Correct.
next 3 years.
That's the thing that makes school work hard for high schools,
Not there.
because kids start in 9th grade taking those EOCs. There are very few seniors that take an EOC. And so a lot of it happens that
The
freshman
biggest
year,
thing we look
sophomore
for now is college career readiness.
year.
You know, have they made college career readiness? And by now, most of them should have. But that's easy. You pull the dashboard up, Dixon can pull up either high school right now, and any kid that's out there, I mean, most of them want to see Courtney was college and career ready. I'll tell you she is. Because she's taken 2 courses at Midlands Tech, and that's one of the stipulations. There's 7 ways that a kid can be college and career ready, but by looking, we've got a list that generates itself. That's a big issue right now, is to make sure all of those kids are because that's 25 points to have that. But you're absolutely right. Part of it you can't do anything about till you work on it on the front end. And the end of course exams is that part. Now, graduation rate, you got to stay on it year in and year out. And it's got to be a daily kind of thing. If a kid transfers out, you can't think, well, I'll go back and get the documentation later, because later turns into a year, and then it turns into 4 years, and it's like, where'd that kid go?
Well, don't we have to release their records though, for them to transfer? So like, what if we just make a policy that you don't get your records until you sign on this piece of paper where you're going?
Sometimes we don't get a course request.
So you
Then we
can
have to
just
go
give-
They just disappear.
Go back to the country.
Yeah, they'll have kids that go back to the country. We tracked a kid down that stopped in Kentucky, stopped in Texas, came back to Tennessee or somewhere in the middle part of the Appalachian. I think that's one of the things that the general public doesn't understand about report cards. It's not quite as clear cut as they think. I mean, when Dixon and I looked today, over the last 4 years, both high schools, I think airports had about 40-something% of the kids that started off with 9 GR move or go somewhere else. BC's a little over 50%. So they're looking for over 200 kids. I mean, and sometimes they don't want their records. They're just, like Mr. Bingham said, they're in Honduras or wherever.
You said 40?
40%.
Now, I understand, but if a kid comes from some other country, we have to enroll them.
That's correct.
And if there's no record, there's no records we can get.
We have a letter from the State Department of Education that says not only we have to enroll them, we have to enroll them when they show up.
That age
So the
appropriate
point
grade.
is,
At the age appropriate.
asking for records would not be would be, I mean, you're not gonna get records from Honduras or Ecuador or wherever, you're not gonna get them, so you don't even ask for those records, or you may ask them, but they're not gonna
Well,
know they're not gonna have them.
BC's got a little girl now that she's got a lot of stuff going on. She's in a wheelchair. It's one thing is orthopedically handicapped, so she's got an IEP, but then the other piece of it is she has never been in school, not ever in school. Well, she's not gonna graduate in 4 years. I don't care how good they are over there. A kid who has never attended a day of school will not graduate a high school in 4 years.
But the point is, if they're in that boat, we have to enroll them, and if they move to another district in another state, they're the same thing. They don't even ask them where they don't request records. So
Well,
there's nothing for
our
us to
hope
do.
is if they move, particularly if they move to another district in South Carolina, we try real hard to follow and send the records as they're going. Now, when they go to another state, it makes it increasingly difficult. And if they move out of the country, it's over. They don't care about our records, but we have to enroll them when they show up. It's easier for us to hold off. Jim's got a case going on with somebody now. Kids won't come to live with grandmama that got in trouble, was being put out of school. You're not supposed to end up enrolling a kid that's been expelled or in lieu of expulsion. Grandmama's trying to say, no, he needs to come here. That kid's enrolled in the United States. Parent guardians in Texas, Jim can say, you aren't the guardian. Grandma's not the legal guardian. We've got a little bit of play, but when they're foreign kids, and the State Department's clear, when they show up, enroll them. And you know, we don't have much choice about that. So it makes it very difficult. I think, Mr. Summers, that's a whole lot more answer than you were probably looking for.
Well, I mean, we've had conversations, and I think, Beth, you brought up, when we talked, you mentioned expulsions a while ago, and I was going back, just looking over the sheet that you presented at the last board meeting, and I don't remember exactly how you worded it, Beth. I mean, looking at expulsions and the way that we as a district, the way it's written up in policy, once a student is expelled, obviously that counts against the graduation rate, if I understand correctly. And it's like, well, as a board, what do we need to look, if we need to delve into to see, do we need to look at that a little differently as far as the categories or the offenses, whatever you want to call them, not to light anything up, but to be more realistic and be in line. What are other districts doing? Are we pretty much mirroring our other districts in the way that we handle expulsions? Are we just like what we're talking about now with the students that are coming from other countries? Are we, we're doing what we're supposed to do, and I understand, it sounds like me, we're doing the right thing. But as far as, again, what's counted against us and what we have to live with in the report card system, it goes back to my initial question. Part of that question was to be, or intended to be, instead of waiting to get whacked when the report card comes out, to be a little more be more preemptive in our process to say, what could we at least have for public information prior to?
Well, I think you've got some good information, and we had the Lexington County Development on board here today, and they were most impressed. We showed them the little video and the presentation that we've done on the district, and to the person in the room, they couldn't believe that was going on in Lexington too, and particularly the fact that we ended up with over $17 million worth of scholarships, and we've more than doubled that in 5 years. And when we look at the map that has all the pins where kids are going to college, I think one of the things that, and I told them, we don't want to make excuses. We don't give excuses, we don't take excuses. We are what we are, we're measured by the same stick as everybody else, but you got to compare apples to apples. 10 kids in Lexington 2 makes a bigger difference percentage-wise than 10 kids in Lexington 1. But when you start to look, one people there figured out that we were getting over $40,000 a kid in scholarship money. Well, that's money going back into the district. And if you look at the kids that are non-poverty kids on there, we're graduating more non-poverty kids than the state. We're at 95%, 94.8 at both high schools. So that's a start to say there's some good things going on. Now, do we have challenges? Yeah, we have some real challenges. Lisa, I watch her just bang her head against the wall every day because we got 17% special ed, and she's working herself to death to try to graduate special ed kids, and got a call first thing this morning about one having a seizure at Pine Ridge. That's a reality. 17% of the population in Lexington too makes a bigger impact in terms of numbers when you're at 8,900 kids. Most districts, it's not that big. We're at 14% ESOL, but that's the group of kids that we got to focus on because the ESOL kids count twice in the report card accounting. Actually, most of them will count 3 times because they count in the all students roster, they count in the ESOL roster, and most of them are kids of poverty, so they count in that bottom 20%. So, you know, that's exactly, when you ask Leonard what did he do at Wood for Wood's report card change, Leonard focused on his ESOL kids. Now, they can't speak English and they don't think in English like the board and the rest of us have spoken all of our life. But they did well enough to move them up a little bit, and just a little bit in this district makes a huge difference both ways. A few kids one way or the other either makes the report card really good or makes the report card really bad. So, you know, if we got a strategy, I think part of our strategy is, and it is not popular, I'll tell you, and there are people who talk sitting at this table right here. If we truly want to focus on the kids that make a difference, we've got to put the absolute finest teachers we've got with the kids that are in the most need. You can't take the very best math teacher in the district and put them in a room with 10 kids in AP calculus. You need to put them in a room that's got 22 kids in Algebra 1 that they can't do very well in Algebra 1, and end up taking them to the Innovation Center and seeing why I'm taking Algebra 1, because I want to be a welder, because I want to be a builder, because I want to work on cars. Why am I taking geometry? Well, I'm taking geometry because I want to do paint and body, and that's what that's about. We've got to put our best people where there's the most need, in my opinion, if we want a different result than what we get, and we've got to count on them. It's not anything, I hate to relate it to a game, but they're points awarded for kids. And poor kids and ESOL kids and special ed kids are where the most points are. And not only is that doing the right thing for them, it's putting more points there, and that's exactly how we would change their report card.
You asked Mr. Drosdak at the last meeting, what do we need to do as a board? What can we do on the exact words? And I guess that's what I'm feeling now. What do we need to do as a board? You know, you're bringing out some very valid points, and but moving forward, you know, we talked about it tonight, but taking that, putting those words into action, what do we need to do? What would the recommendation, or is there a recommendation?
Oh, yeah.
That we need to do?
If I could wave a magic wand, my wish for this district is that this board would lead the charge in the fact that we want to make sure that every kid reads well, writes well, and does mathematics better than anything else, and that we spend our time with that, and we have high expectations, and that when kids need intervention, we go back and do it. We don't teach to the middle or teach to the high. We look for the kids who need the help. You know, everybody in here knows my story. I was one of those kids. If there hadn't been people like Ruth Frady and folks that were willing to help me, I'd be sitting out there on front porch in Cowpen somewhere. But that's the message that we've got to come across loud and clear, that we want our best people helping all of our kids, and we want to focus on moving all of our kids, and we expect to do well. There's no way we should ever be below the average in anything that you can measure. We've got too many good things going on here. Our problem is a numbers problem. Ms. Kessler,
No, I think we've got the solution, but when are we going to stop talking about it and put it into action? I don't understand why we're sitting here, we're discussing the same things last year, and here we are. And when Beth brought up the question about if that's 7%, why aren't we spending 7% in reading and math? Why aren't we doing it? And why can't we start next Monday or tomorrow.
We, in elementary schools, we are. I mean, we have protected time in English, language arts, as well as math. So I don't remember the numbers, but.
120 minutes for ELA and 70 minutes for math.
I mean, the majority is on those two subjects. And like Dr. James said, they incorporate math and social studies oftentimes into those things.
Is that in every element? Because that's not what I'm hearing.
Should be in every element.
And to Mr. Sumner's point, Ms. Kessler, you right, I mean, I ain't talked about anything different since I walked in here May of 2015. I mean, my philosophy on education, I don't have enough pedagogy for it to change very far. It's been the same thing. But I do think that what we have to do is say that with one voice, as 7 board members and the superintendent, that that's what we expect across the board.
Yeah, I think you're in charge of the district, and you need to do what's best for these kids, just like you need to solve the problems that we've got in this district. And then when there's grievances or anything like that, they can sit before the board. But until then, you're in charge. Daggone it. Go with it. You think this is what's going to work? Let's go with it.
And I'll tell you also that, you know, Dr. Bingham and I worked hard last year to try and streamline. We have so many things that are going on in schools. We really have tried to streamline it back to our whole professional learning communities that we've talked about for so long that we haven't really dug deep into. And so one of the things that I can tell you that is different that I worry about every day, just to be honest with you, is we're holding principals accountable for that work. What we're asking teachers to do, we're asking administrators to do. This year they have been bringing documents to principals meetings. This is principals bring them to AP cohorts so that we can make sure that the work that we're talking about is getting done to some level. Now, does that mean that it's getting done to the level that we want it to? In some places, no, they're just starting. But in some places, you know, I can tell you that all places we're pushing them. And I hear lots of conversations because there's a balance with it. You know, we've talked about having to coach up teachers because there's not teachers beating down the doors to come into any school district, quite honestly, not just ours. But so there's a balance of trying to coach them and support them, and the same thing with the administrators. But I hear what you're saying, and I agree from the administrator. I've been a principal. And so that's one of the reasons that I feel very comfortable with my former peers saying, we can do this. And these are the things that we're going to try and do consistently. And so asking them to bring that as proof is something different that we're trying this year to make sure we can streamline it and try to have some impact. Will we see it in test scores coming year? I can't tell you that, but what I can tell you is I feel like that if you ask principals this year, they'll tell you that we're doing a little bit better with instruction than we have been because they're having to have more of a part in that. They can't turn it loose to somebody else and just hope that it happens.
Because then we should see improvement. Bottom line.
We should.
See improvement.
But I will tell you that in schools that I've been to, and I feel like I've done a good job at some of those, the first year, sometimes scores go down a little bit. Just for right, I can tell you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. We focused a lot on data teams, and, you know, we saw data. Last year, we focused on achievement teams, short cycle assessments. All that means is that teachers are doing some pre and post, and they're looking at 1 or 2 skills that they're working on. We also talk about benchmarks, district benchmarks that we're trying to use to measure where kids are throughout this whole learning process so that we can do the interventions that he's talking about. Because in Dixon's opinion, that is a huge area that we haven't done well in. It's really trying to pinpoint what skills individual kids are missing and fill in gaps. Because we have lots of skills with gaps. But I sent out a form that I have asked principals to bring to the principals meeting next week. All I have done is taken our training that we did this summer on PLCs and I have simplified it down. And I have had 3 principals call me and say, Dixon, I'm struggling with getting my teachers to do the achievement team process as well as doing this. form that you're wanting with the benchmark. My response to them is, I don't really care if you use this form with the benchmark. This form can work with any of those assessments because it's really about looking at that assessment and not worrying about what the score is necessarily for the kid, but understanding what gaps the kids have so that we can provide targeted instruction to help them grow overall. But that's just an example of where we're pushing them, and some of the, it's stressful, it's accountability, it's not fun, so we're really trying to balance, because we don't want to turn off any of our teachers. And our message has been, we're in this together. And that's one of the reasons I feel so strongly about principals bringing documentation here, is because they're in it, and I want them to own it. I want our coaches to own it. I want everybody to understand we're all in this together.
You mentioned $17 million in scholarships. I'm assuming that doesn't have anything to do with the kids who are taking all these Midlands Tech courses and getting credit.
Dawn's figured that out
That was
differently, what that value would
Yeah,
be.
we set up some pressure.
She's got a value associated with that, and then we've got military, she's broken all that out, so those are savings too. I mean, what those hours would be, and that would be equivalent to where they go. I mean, because that Midlands Tech course will transfer, well, actually, we haven't heard anywhere that won't take it, but it'll transfer to any in-state school, and I think most out-of-state schools. So if you're some of the more expensive schools, those 3 hours are worth a whole lot more than some others. So that increases the money, yes.
All them kids that had 2 years of.
Yes, sir. And one of the things that I think the board would be proud of, and I mean, it's just, I've just got to watch it grow and be the benefit of it. And we told folks this morning, matter of fact, they asked about it specifically, is the fact that Lexington 2 was the first district in the Midlands to start that. Dixon began that at Airport, and it has grown. And every year that we have been to the Midlands Tech graduation, even though we're one of the smallest districts in the Midlands, we have the largest number of kids who are receiving either certificates or diplomas there. So that's working exceedingly well. And that'll hold true again this year. We'll have more kids this year than any of the other districts. I don't have any doubt about that.
Lexington 1 had a handful last year. Lexington 2 had rows.
Right. We have outnumbered, and the Innovation Center's done a lot of that, because now we've got kids from both high schools that can come together and take those classes, and kids are going to Midlands Tech as well. So, and then tomorrow, we're signing an agreement with them that our kids in our career technology courses, that they'll certify those they'll exempt those courses if they go to Midlands Tech, but they can't transfer that credit to South Carolina or Clemson, but it counts as credit at Midlands Tech. So if they work on the 2-year degree first, that's the same as hours that they don't have to pay for there. So that's another milestone for us.
Mr. Bingham, that's a good point, because that's not something that we get now. If we could ask the early college kids, okay, you're exempted. We have kids who exempted their first 2 years of college. How much did that save you at the college where you plan to attend? That's another level of when we're talking about all those savings. That would be a good one to do. That would happen.
That plan got my $20 million goal, because my goal is that we get $20 million.
There you go.
You can look at the AP classes too, because they saved money by not taking some of the ones who passed AP. They would have exempted out of English 1, or so you got those numbers y'all looked at too.
Anything 3 or better would have counted. But I don't know, I think I answered your question.
Well, all right, moving the conversation, how do we chart progress? On a monthly basis, or things that you brought up, Dixon. You talk about the reports coming in. How do we? Is there what tangibly is there that we something that at least I can look at anyway, but just to say, and I say just the progress, but a report to let us know if there's something new, and several things that you mentioned, Dr. James. I say as far as implementing ideas, this is what's happening, and we don't forget about next October, whenever the shoe drops and the report cards come out, if we've had something in front of us for a number of months.
Well, I think now is probably the time for this board to start asking those questions, because for the last 4 years, what this board has had to deal with is you spent an entire year trying to get a bond referendum passed, and then the board spent time after the referendum was passed trying to get everything lined up to work, and then once it kind of came together, and when Don and I came here, the plan was sort of, well, we're going to take it in stages, and we're going to build one, and we're going to move to one, and then all of a sudden, one night it's like we got about 4 things going all at one time instead of one at a time, and then that of course turned Don into marathon meetings explaining all that. But we're at the point now where we're about to the end of the building program. The facilities are upgraded. You've got a goal for what you want the teacher-pupil ratio should look like. The financing is good in the district. You've got a sound budget. You've got sound financing. Now's the time to start talking about how are we doing it, what our job really is, educating kids, and what we want our benchmarks to be. So I think the board meeting time starts to open up more and more to hear from curriculum instruction and get something on a regular basis, because honestly, if we can have kids leaving the 3rd grade that can read and write and leave the 5th grade ready to go into middle school, we won't have to worry about them at high school level. If they go into middle school ready for middle school, they'll come out the other end doing well, and they'll do well when they get to high school. 9th grade is always a challenge, but just like Ms. Brandon was talking about, we've got the capabilities now, even without doing benchmark testing or pre-test, post-test, we've got the opportunity to look at those kids and predict how they're going to do in the future based on the sum total of how they've done since the 3rd grade in English, language, arts, reading, writing, and mathematics on their standardized test and on their teacher-made test. And in middle school, they're going through common formative assessments at each of the middle schools. So all of our middle schoolers are being tested on the same thing. So, you know, by the end of this year, we ought to be able to tell you with a certain degree, with a fair degree of certainty that a kid is going to do well in the 9th grade, or they're going to need intervention in the 9th grade. And that's the biggest issue right there is intervening for the kids that need, because those are the kids that are going to count most if we just look at the report card.
Well, I mean, there's positives out there. When I called you a week or so ago about the email, you know, I'd gotten on the program, the mentoring program at Casey, and I don't know well, but I signed up. So I haven't been there yet up to mentor, but I went there for one of their activities Friday morning, and it sounds like a wonderful program. That's another story we were talking about that needs to be shared or told. I don't know what other schools are using that. Currently, you want to call it I guess something to kind of get a leg up. It sounds like really a great program, and one that I'm going to be part of.
Well, we've got a lot of folks that are doing some things. I'm in the Rotary here, Casey, West Columbia, and Rotarians are working with Slope Growth and a literacy program. That's an international program through Rotary. So lots of our schools are beginning, particularly at the elementary level, to focus on read well, write well, do mathematics, everything else comes together with it. And that's kind of our mantra right now.
When, Dr. Jones, I think it would be helpful, I mean, not at all going from like tooting our own horn as a board or anything, but to highlight some of those things that y'all, you know, upper level administration are doing, board members doing, just to show that, hey, we're taking this seriously. I mean, but I met with my mentor group yesterday morning early, so I've already got my little group of girls. But, you know, I mean, that's important to show that, hey, we recognize this need. Casey Elementary said, well, okay, I tell you what you can do. You can take a small group of kids and follow their progress. And then we said, okay, we will do it, you know. And I think that's important to highlight that our board is taking that seriously. It's a good message to send out to the other schools. We got board members who are willing to, you know, do whatever, be involved, not again to micromanage or go teach a class, you know, but as far as what do you need us to do? I know, I think, Christina, you take kids home from school and give them clothes, she does all kind of stuff, and it's outreach and service, and I mean, just highlighting that we do have upper level administration, people in district office, because it also humanizes this office as well. You know, like when we put out the pictures of y'all serving the meals to the hurricane kids and stuff, that was good.
And we can do that, and one of the things, right, we gained a tremendous ally that I never expected to do with the developmental board. Every one of them asked for a copy of this video and the PowerPoint that went along with it. They won't show us. As a matter of fact, one of the businesses asked if we would come and do that for their employees. So, you know, the developmental board represents all of Lexington County, and if we can narrow their focus to Lexington too, you know, it puts us in a good spot, I think. And you know, again, we're measured with the same stick as everybody else, but I think that if you look at numbers and you look at what we're really measuring, and Ms. Brown said at one point in time that, you know, one test didn't define a kid, and that's one of the things I talked to them about today. I don't know that I would want in my SAT score plastered all over that PowerPoint. I don't think anybody in that room would want theirs plastered all over there. But the bottom line is, most of us turned out fairly okay, even though we may not have been a 1,400 SAT score. So, you know, there are a lot of other things that I think our kids are doing. And the fact that we're putting dollars back in parents' pocket, you know, Todd Cullen said today that, you know, when he writes that check to Georgia, that makes all the difference in the world. So that's real dollars when the kid gets a scholarship, or sends to class, or however they look at it. That's hard dollars that stays in this district. So, but anyway, we will update you along, and if you got questions, we'll be glad to try to answer them. But our plan is simple: focus on where the points are and try to do the right thing for kids.
Instead of continued discussion, we'll just say updates, you know, report card updates, etc. Okay.
We'll keep you posted.
One thing before we move on from report cards is, it's November now, and, well, for our English 2 students and our Algebra 1 students would now be the time that we
Right
would
now, it's
be-
the time, at the 9 weeks to stop right now and say, all right, I got Christina Rucker, she's making an A, and there's no problem. No doubt in my mind she'll make a C, but Bill James is struggling to fail. So regroup with kids, the kids that aren't doing well, run the course the entire year long. They take the end of course exam in the spring of the year. And, you know, I told Dixon it's curriculum instruction sin, and he had afraid to cringe when I talk like this, but the bottom line is teach them to get that 70%. That's the magic number for them. They are not going to be the kid that makes an A. We've got to face it. It's better for them to get 70% and make a C, get the points for the report card, then get the grade behind it, than to fail it and either have to go in and make it up in grad point or take the course all over again. So, you know, even though I know I sound like a heretic to those folks, we're regrouping them and teach to pass and grade on the test. And, you know, some things they're not going to get to, but they probably are not going to be the kid that turns into the math major.
And who would be the person to check this and then to meet with the kids and the
Well,
parents?
that's got to go through the high schools at both high schools. Now, the middle schools, and high school principals, and there's 3 old high school principals. High school principals have always complained, I did, Don did, Dixon did, about the fact that the middle schools take the cream of the crop, and they teach Algebra 1 and English 1 to the very smartest kids, and middle schools have a 100% pass rate, and high schools don't. Well, now that's changed because the middle school kids will count in the high school score. So that's a group of kids that they don't have to worry about. The bulk of the kids that are coming in, they're either going to be kids that are just solid math kids and they're going to do well, or they're going to be kids who aren't very good math kids. So by sitting down and talking to the teachers in Algebra 1, teachers can control their class, for lack of a better word, fairly quickly. But that's got to be done between guidance and administration at the high school.
And are the high school principals, have they met with their team so that they know that that would be something important to look at there.
We've talked about doing that this entire year. I'm a firm believer in that. And that's not anything new. We actually did that back when you were a student at airport. It's just you were smart enough, you didn't have to do it. So, I mean, it's not anything magical. It just gives kids who need more time.
Right, but I just want to make sure somebody's actually going to do it. I think that's important, that they do that, if it will help. And also with the graduation rate, if a kid is failing something right now, you know, someone needs to be looking at their schedule to see, can we drop something else next semester and have them take that same class again, if that other class maybe isn't needed and one is required for graduation.
Well, we not only could drop it, take it over, we can extend the time, but with the dashboard, and I won't spend half the night talking about the first thing on the agenda, but the dashboard on every kid and the information that's in our school now. We can look and tell you the number of kids who are college and career ready. You can look at the classes about who's passing algebra, who isn't passing algebra. All that's readily available. It's not like 20 years ago when we're keeping it on paper. That's all built in. And Morgan and Dixon could explain that better, but it'll take them longer. So.
Dr. James, along with monitoring our students, we really do have to look at our teachers, because the scenario I gave this group at the last meeting actually happened in one of our high schools in math class. So we've got to get teachers on board teaching as well.
And you're right. And
intervention.
That was my point right there. Some of them maybe just need intervention, need to be taught how to teach, but something, we can't close our eyes to that.
That's exactly right. No money. I agree with you.
How much pushback would you anticipate from your parents when you tell them we need to take your student and extend them out 1 year and whatever?
I don't anticipate much, because what they're facing, those parents are typically, those are the parents who can't help their child. If one of your children weren't doing very well in algebra, well, one, it'd be an anomaly, but beyond it being an anomaly, there are two people in the house that could help that child. Most of those kids who are not doing well, they're beyond their mother and daddy's mathematical ability. And even a lot of the parents, I talked to a parent the other day that has great math skills, but no patience, told me, said, I can't help my kid because I don't understand why my kid doesn't understand. So just having the knowledge is not necessarily the only prerequisite, but you know, they're faced with the fact that their child probably will fail and have to take the course over, or we're going to put a safety net under them that draws it out, gives them more time. It's less stressful at home. I think a lot of it's how you explain it. You know, if you're coming home and you don't understand your algebra homework, but you got a lot of algebra homework, and mom and daddy don't understand how to help you with algebra homework, that turns into either a war at home. Child goes to bed crying, mad, mom and daddy mad, nobody can get it, we're blaming on the teacher, we're always at the conference with the teacher kind of thing, or they don't do anything at all. The way we're suggesting is to say, all right, we're going to drag it out long enough that they can get it in small chunks with somebody who can explain it to them. And we'd like for them to get all this amount, but we'd really be happy if they get 70% of that amount. So I don't anticipate a lot of pushback. Now, we may come back and I may say, boy, was I wrong, but I don't think so.
Well, I know how we will have parents that push, they want their kids to take algebra and English in the 8th grade, and they're not necessarily ready, but they'll be pushing, oh no, I need them in there, because if they don't, they're not going to be.
And I'll be very honest with you, I met with parents that talk about that. I don't necessarily think that's a good thing, and I know Fredo Dixon just cringed again, because one of the things that we try to do is we try to put kids who are in elementary school in high school and high schoolers in college. William James took 8th grade math in the 8th grade, and a whole group of mothers called my house wanting to know what was wrong with the teacher and why we wasn't taking Algebra 1 and all that. But the bottom line was, for me, the standardized test in the 8th grade is based on 8th grade math. We took 8th grade math, we did well on the 8th grade math test at the end of the year. When he went into the 9th grade at Gaffney High School, he took Algebra 1 and Geometry at the same time, and he moved on, and he took every level of math that any other kid did and did perfectly fine with it. But you're right, everybody thought that what's wrong? What's wrong with William? What's wrong with the teacher? Why? Should we put our kid in that? We thought that was a good thing. Well, sometimes I think part of our problem is we try to accelerate kids so fast, it becomes a status thing, and it's like if I'm just normal, then something must be bad wrong. But the reality, when we talk about gifted and advanced, there's not 10% of the population of the United States or any community that is truly gifted. There's a difference between being smart and being gifted. And so I think for me, and again, Fred is a math person and an elementary person, and Dixon's all about curriculum. I think sometimes we push that too hard, and we push that too hard as educators, and we don't let folks know there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking 8th grade math and 8th grade English in the 8th grade. Being an 8th grader is just kind of what 8th graders do, but that's a hard thing to overcome, and that's a person at the time, and I know it can be a nightmare, because Cynthia answered the phone a million times because they were saying, I know he's not going to say that that teacher's not any good, and she was a perfectly good teacher. I mean, she was a great teacher. Status. So hopefully we'll be good enough at it that we'll still keep the kids who really can pass Algebra 1 in Algebra 1, move them on and advance them. But you know, the kids who can't, make sure that they understand. There's nothing wrong with that. That's smart. Gifted is way smart. And then I think, and I talked to Dixon, and we still got a little bit of debate among us about who's right and who's wrong. We'll talk about the fact that changing the course sequencing and doing geometry in the 9th grade, and my argument is the fact that they don't do as many equations in geometry, but they do some. So a kid going into algebra has some experience with equations. Now, Dixon and the curriculum folks have reasons why they think algebra's a better choice in the 9th grade, but
You want me to share those?
no, I don't. I want you to sit over there. You know, the bottom line is we don't take an end-of-course test in geometry. So that gives a kid an entire year that we don't have to worry about that. And we put a kid in algebra that has some experience with equations. So we're looking at how do we make this where kids can be successful wherever they are. And I think that's where we are. Being a school district as small as we are, with as many pieces as we got moving, we can individualize our curriculum, and that's the mindset that we've got to accept. And we're in straight roads. We built all these schools for these collaborative spaces, and we're still in straight roads, but we're getting out of it a little bit.
So you're saying it's kind of like the biology, chemistry, and physics. Why is it in that order?
Because it's alphabetical.
Because it's alphabetical. That's the reason we do it. That's carried over from 80s or 90 years ago.
That's right. Which one should you take first? Biology starts with a B. Take biology. That's exactly right.
Just don't take it, sorry.
Never mind. Just English major down here. Physical science, we all took in 9th grade. That started with B.
Well, all right. I'm sorry. We've talked 55 minutes about report cards. I thought it was going to be about 5.
All right. Any other questions on that? Move on to discussion on draft of intra-district athletic transfer rules policy.
All right. What I got is Mr. Summers' motion was that we be directed to draft some course of action that embraces the board's goals to define the role of athletics in the district, and minimum the document will address the expectations of student athletes, the code of conduct for coaches, recruiting and transfers. That was the motion. I've worked on this, I actually typed this, so the typographical errors and misspellings,
So don't
that
judge
ain't
me
Dan,
again.
that's Bill James. I'll give you an overview. There is no pride in authorship, so if something just stands out and you all want to change it or throw the whole thing away, that's quite all right too. One of the things that I did put there as a premise is that you start with an athletic review committee that's made Beth talking about having people who understood poverty and that sort of thing. So what I did is suggest that we put a chief human resources officer. I did put names because people will change. The positions won't. Chief administration officer, chief operations officer is always the person who brings children into the district, the director of special ed, because a good number of there are 950 some odd kids that participate in athletics in this district, and out of that, a high percentage of them are special ed kids. So having Lisa or whoever is in her position in the future is important. District social worker, having Diane or whoever is in her position, I think is important. For anything that's not handled at the coach or at the school level, that would be the committee that hurt. You've got 2 high schools. That's about as fair as you can get. You asked about expectations for coaches and for kids, and I've read lots of different things from other districts. The high school league, the board policy addresses some of these things. Basically, we expect coaches to be professional, that they dress and act professional, that they have the necessary certifications. They don't put their hands on kids. They aren't profane in public or around kids or parents. You don't have temper tantrums. If they are fined, they pay the fine. I don't think we pay fines. We expect them to supervise their kids and at all times. The eligibility starts with the high school league. That's the responsibility of the athletic director and individual sport of the coaches. High school league rules, we don't violate them. If we violate them, we report ourselves. Hopefully it's an accident and not an intent. We don't recruit kids, that's a violation of high school league. We don't endorse that by assistant coaches, by players, by staff, by alumni, by community members, by anybody. That's an ethical issue, so we don't do it. If it happens, we report it and we move on and deal with it. Again, anything that you would review would go to that committee. We do have limited school choice in this district. If you're moving, the easy thing is to do it in the 9th grade. Then it doesn't come up to, is it for athletics, which is a violation of high school league rules? Is it for avoiding the discipline problem? And not only do you impact, at our schools, you impact the other schools 9GR if they transfer. If you've got a legitimate transfer that's coming in, then obviously you review it and bring them in. But it's between schools. It can't be for athletic reasons. And I think that's a good rule to have in the district, and it's already a high school league rule. If you have kids that transfer for athletic reasons, the high school league would have deemed them ineligible. I think they can't be eligible for the year. And again, you can do that. If they're leaving to avoid expulsion, I don't think they'll be eligible to play at either school. That's a disciplinary action. We don't take kids that are being expelled. If they're in the alternative school, they would not be eligible and they aren't named. We expect coaches to do a budget, keep a budget, stay within their budget, submit inventories, use the purchase order system, make purchases in the proper fashion, make sure they stay within the budget, do an individual accounting or inventory of what equipment they have, keep a copy on file at school, keep a copy on file with Marty, because ultimately that is school property. All those uniforms, all those stuff, regardless of the sport, that is district property. We go around and have people put tags on 40-year-old wooden chairs and scan them in with bars. So it stands to reason that we would keep an inventory on all of our equipment. We expect the facilities to be well maintained, and I borrowed a statement out of White Knowles' handbook about it's necessary, if necessary, coaches are willing to mark fields, sweep floors, clean locker rooms, or assist in whatever needs to be done. Ms. Kessler, you remember back in the old days, that was just common practice. That was kind of job description. For repairs, we expect them to be prompt, but I don't expect it to be before planning creates an emergency. You know, don't send something to maintenance and say, this doesn't work or that doesn't work, and we've got a ballgame in 30 minutes when it's been broken for 2 weeks. But we need to follow the work order system, and that makes it easy for Don's office and whoever's in that office from now on to figure out, is maintenance doing what they need to help athletics, or are we not getting the system done? As far as kids' expectations of kids, basically athletics was designed to enhance education, not to interfere with it. It's a privilege, it's not a right, and I think when a kid steps into that role, they put themselves at a higher expectation. They should be held to a higher standard. They represent the school district on a different level. Part of the board policy, there's a $75 and $50 participation fee. The policy says it has to be paid before the athlete participates in practice, workout, or involvement. That just comes from our policy. Basically, those kids impact, or those kids represent our district at all times. We don't want a negative impression. You know, we want them to have good attendance, good academic achievement, the things that are required by the state of South Carolina and the high school league. We expect them to pass. We expect them, if they're going to play or participate, to be in school, not use profanity, not make inappropriate gestures, tone opponents, common sense kinds of things, play fairly, play within the rules. Tobacco, vaping, drug testing, alcohol abuse comes directly out of our board policy manual. Hazing and bullying is not part of our board policy, but it's going to end up having to be something at some point in time, because that's become kind of a hot button issue. So I took this out of another district from around here. Criminal charges, this is out of our policy, and then the last thing I wrote there is additional policies that basically says that if you represent Lexington 2 at any point in time, game, practice, after school, during school, you're held to the board policy. That's a quick overview again. Like I said, I read about a dozen different handbooks, looked at our board policy. There's nothing magical about this, so I mean, the board's welcome to strike, add to, take away, whatever, and I'll try to answer whatever question you might have.
Can we have a discussion on this in a month so that we have time to?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Because again, please know, there's no pride in authorship. I just tried to find the best examples that I could to address what I thought was in this motion by Mr. Summers.
This is speed reading, so I probably missed up something. Did you have anything in here covering the student who may be homeschooled but legally can't participate in sports here?
No, ma'am, because that's part of the high school league ruling. They can, but we would expect them.
Can we catch a fee, $250 fee or something like that that they would have?
We can't charge them more than we would charge another child, but we can charge them the same thing as we charge another child. They can.
I think another district does charge an additional fee, but I didn't realize.
I don't know, but I will ask high school league. I've got a meeting Thursday morning, so I will ask that. But I think you can only charge them what you would charge a regular resident.
They charge $150, and I'm thinking, okay, that really doesn't cover the uniform, so I was thinking.
No, ma'am, no, ma'am. Uniforms are expensive, as you well know, regardless of sport.
You said 950?
953, 6, it's less than 960.
Dr. Bill, is this what you've typed up going to be your recommendation, or is this what you typed up what you thought Mr. Summers wanted to propose?
This is a draft based on Mr. Summers' recommendation, or motion, excuse me, not a recommendation, based on his motion. This is a draft attempting to answer the things that he put in his motion. So if there's something in there that the board wants out, or something that's not in there that the board wants in, I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. This was designed for discussion.
But this should be a rough draft of a policy for Lexington School District 2, correct?
Well,
It's got to be something. We've got to have a policy.
Well, and I hope that and I don't know, I guess Mr. Summers is the only one to know. I've addressed what I think that this motion says. Now, I mean, I've talked about coaches, I've talked about kids, I've talked about athletic review committees and facilities and eligibility and recruitment. And so, you know, the logistics of it, the nuts and bolts may not be right, but I think I have covered the issues. And I think it's the board's opportunity to discuss it like you said, Ms. Kessler.
Well, I think several of us talked, and Bud and I talked a little bit about this, because we need a policy. We don't need suggestions, we need an athletic policy.
And, but I do think you're gonna have to have your discussion about what this board can agree on, what needs to be. One thing I feel strongly about, I'll be very honest with you, I don't like the idea of non-employees coaching. And I put in here not more than 40% of the coaching staff, because non-employees coaching, we don't have any way of controlling that individual. If that individual does something to a kid, walked off the field, says something to an official, does whatever, it's not like we're holding a check and a teaching certificate over their head. They're just somebody that shows up in the afternoon and coaches. So to have a coaching staff that is more than 40% of people who have no connection to the district other than showing up and coaching, I think is a liability issue.
Would this cover that? I mean, if you have a policy, would it cover coaches that are not?
Well, you still don't have a liability issue, but the question is, how many of those people do you have? We have a lot in this district.
And then what if you took one of those people off and the other, let's say you've got 10 coaches and 4 out of 10 are volunteer coaches or non-employed coaches. Well, and walk out and leave you 4 shy for a season. I'm like you. I'd much rather they be employees, but I understand it's hard to get coaches, so I understand the need for them.
But basically what you're saying is that this isn't all specifically all your recommendation, is something you drafted based on what you thought Mr. Summers' motion is. And
I'm asking the board's input.
Right, you're asking the
Yeah,
board's
the
input.
purpose
You're
for
not saying-
this was to get something in front of us to discuss as to what a policy might look like if we're gonna do that, what components are gonna be in it, because I think they're flying blind to not know what really should the policy, what is it you're after to actually be in the policy that everybody will agree on.
Well, what this should be is what the district and the board expects from from athletics in our district. So, right? So,
I'm just saying it's hard to get coaches. I mean, I'm glad we've got something in front of us, but thank you for bringing it up. But been doing this a long time. It's hard to get coaches, and we've already restricted, you know, anybody sitting at this table from being able to be a coach. And, you know, we got some high schools over there who could use some cheerleading coaches, and I'm not ever going to be able to help them out again unless I quit this, which might be real soon. But my point being, you know, we keep putting rules and we keep making restrictions. We have somebody who wants to get hired over here at XYZ school, and then calls get made about, oh, we can't get them because of this, that, or the other. Well, I mean, at some point, how can we have 60% on staff if we're always checking to see things and following? I mean, it's just, I'm worried because I agree. I want all my head coaches on my high school or middle school staff. I think that's important. And back in the old days, we had everybody. But the other side of that coin is, okay, I'm the principal today, and I have Bill James walks in and he coaches football, basketball, and track. Christina Rucker walks in and she coaches nothing but says, hey, I'll do your annual for you, right? Well, I'm looking at the 60%, 40% or whatnot thing, and Bill James, I know you're a really good teacher, but I'm just going to say you were a
I
terrible
like
teacher.
to think so.
Let's say he was a terrible teacher, had terrible test scores. He's an English teacher. You're an English teacher. You come in, your kids have been soaring out in test scores, and I will then have to hire Bill James as the lesser teacher because I'm looking to get a coach. You see, and that's the only thing. And I agree with you, though. I mean,
Well, I think
That worries me.
in response to that, and I'll be very honest with you, Ms. Brown, from my point of view, I think the board has to make that call. quite honestly, I started writing this and I thought about my time coaching and, you know, and I think a lot about liability. I think more about liability now than I have in a long time because we seem to get a lot of lawsuits. But, you know, and it worries me about we just pick up somebody. And for a lot of the people in this community, they're good people, they're people in the community, they're people who are solid, they aren't going anywhere. But I don't think you can write a policy around names of people. You have to write a policy for the future and who might be. And it might be that you're the principal and I did coach all three of those sports and did fairly decent with them and you know, I'd like to say I couldn't teach English. I couldn't tell you a dangling participle from an adverb. But you know, the bottom line is, I would like to think that if I'm in this community and you've known me for a long time and you need help and I can help you, that could work out. But by the other side of that coin, what happens if somebody comes in and says, oh, well, I played at the University of South Carolina, and I played here, and I played there, and I want to come back, and then the next thing you know, they've said something to a parent, or they've said something to a kid, or they get mad and pitch a temper tantrum. Worse than that is, a lot of times those volunteer folks are the people who pitch the biggest fit with officials. I mean, I think there's got to be some way to hold people accountable, but that's just the Bill James piece. 40% is not a magical number. It may not be right. The right thing may be to strike it. It's just, we've got to know there's a liability associated with it, which is why I put something about it in the first place. If the board's aware that there's a liability associated with volunteer coaching, and we're willing to accept that liability.
Well, what do we do for volunteer coaches now? Is there anything set up to do background
Well, we do
checks?
background checks, yes.
Okay.
Everybody has background checks, and I mean, they go through all of that. And, you know, I don't know that we've had any problem. No problem we've had was not with volunteers. The problem we had was with an employee. So, you know, I just think you need to be aware. And at the end of the day, like I said, that number might be 0, it might be strike through that sentence, but it's there to make you aware. And I think in a perfect world, it'd be like, you're right, Beth. I mean, when I came out of Wofford, finding a coaching job, I was just glad to get a coaching job. I just wanted to coach and just wanted to have one. And I understand exactly what you're talking about. I told Dawn 50 times in the past year, looking at kids play, that I wish both coaches had let me coach their defensive backs and quarterbacks, because I don't like the footwork on either one of them, but that's personal. So,
But back in the day, that was like an expectation when you went for the job. What are you gonna do? That was one of the
That's
questions
right.
I was asked. That's how I became a
That's kind of weird.
cheerleading coach is really marketable, right, Miss Kessler? I mean, you know, or annual staff.
Ms.
or whatever.
Kessler, we have a job for you if you'll take cheerleaders.
Right, right, and you know,
There's a master's degree.
well, when I went to SLU, I went there to interview for the football job, and they said, by the way, you're the basketball coach.
And I don't know if they don't ask young kids now, young kids just don't see the need to do those extra things, but and I think it's a good line, but obviously, I know now we can tweak and put something like our goal would be to have.
Well, I think too, the other side of that is the board willing to, you talk about people not being hired here or hired there. I think part of it is what's the commitment of our board to, I mean, you got PE classes, you got grad point classes, you got, we're one of the few districts in the state that still has study hall. So what's our expectation for if you have a Bill James who is an awful English teacher, but a good football coach? You know, do you let me come there and I say, man, I sure am loving this grad point. I got 10 kids and they work on a computer and I get pretty sports page all day long. I think I'll get out of coaching. I can go home at 3 o'clock. You know, do we tie that to a coaching job and say, you know, Jim Bowie told us when we were groomed, we didn't argue for you being a genius. When you give up your coaching job, have a job. I don't know, that's a board decision, but that sentence is there to say to this board, there is a liability associated with that. How you assume it is up to the board.
One thing that I've heard you say in this is that some of this stuff is coming out of board policy, right?
Yes, sir.
So, of these, I mean, we don't need to keep reiterating the same board policy, or we don't need to create a policy of a policy. We need to, what are the things in here that are not covered in board policy? Can you go through?
Well, the board policy talks about the drugs, the alcohol, the expectation of professionalism,
Well, it comes as to, are we creating a policy or an athletic manual? Are we creating the policy sets sort of the general things. This is more specifics. Is this an administrative rule?
This, to me, whatever this document turns out to be, it's like our discipline policy, our discipline plan that's updated every year. It's an administrative rule that attaches to policy JJ student activities, because we talk about having at least 4 academic courses, passing a total of 5 courses that are for graduation, behavior. We talk about all those things. So I would see this athletic handbook as being an administrative rule that attaches to the student conduct or staff.
I mean, these things like a student transferring to avoid expulsion in our district, I mean, they can't avoid it. I mean, if they're staying in the district, the discipline hearing is going to be had one way or the other. You know, if they leave the district.
In our district, that's true. Now, we've had, and Jim's been fighting this battle the last 2 weeks, that we've had people who won't transfer in here to keep from being expelled in another district, to which we've said no.
Let them out, just if they agree to leave, then they wouldn't be expelled. If they
Well,
could find
technically,
somewhere else to go.
You're not supposed to do that.
Technically, you're not supposed to do that. Do people
But
do
they try
it?
to check their graduation rates, not districts.
But that's why.
That's
they
exactly
try to
right.
transfer
That's
them out.
exactly right. And that's the reason Jim's got one that he's got right now, is because the district has said if you transfer, you won't be expelled.
Because
Dr. James, that's why we need it to be a policy, so these things don't happen to us. And at one time, there was a very direct policy, and it had do's and don'ts on it, and it was followed. And what I'm kind of finding strange now is to think that there's not a policy that is online covering this now. Because when we coached, and when I coached and retired, there was a very strict policy concerning the governance of coaches. And each school had their set of policies, do's and don'ts, and it was a book. It was something of this nature. So we've got to have, if we don't have a policy, then we're going to be in the same situation we are now.
Well, there's not anything like that in the board policy at this point. I'll be honest with you, I don't remember. Of course, I didn't deal with a lot of that. Les did when I was at the airport. That was a long time ago. But there's no document like that in any of our policies, and I haven't been able to find any kind of document like that. Now, Beth sent me a copy of the document that BC has used over the years that generally falls into a lot of this stuff here. It's not the same. Some of it is from that document, some of it's not, but they've got an in-house document. Airport's got an in-house kind of document. That's what Dawn was asked for when the news media called her requesting what our athletic policy was. She sent them the little document from Airport, one from BC. So, but we don't have anything to my knowledge. I can't find it in copies of written board policy here or online board policy where there's any athletic kind of policy.
So, and then a question too, like, and again, I know you just handed this out, so we'll have a lot more questions, I'm sure, but like, is this intended as the discipline manual as well for the coaches? So like, let's say I'm coaching, and let's say I said the D word in the presence of some players or students or parents or the public. I said the D word. Well, then do I get referred to this athletic review committee?
No, I
and then
think
they
that's
decide?
your principal's job to deal with that, and then, but if you're one of those coaches that, you know, I'm not naive nor am I Puritan. I mean, there's not a coach alive that at some point in time, something hasn't made them mad enough that they haven't said something they wish they had not said in front of a kid or in front of somebody else. And I dare say most people have probably experienced something in their life. But what would happen in a case like that is if you get somebody that just goes absolutely unbelievably ballistic, I think that's got to be held at a higher level. But if you got a coach out there that says something inappropriate in practice, I think their principal needs to deal with it. That the superintendent oughtn't have to deal with individual coaches. Principals should deal with them. But there comes a point in time, if that continues or if their behavior continues, it reaches a district office level. And I don't think that committee, I think there comes a point in time where that committee doesn't handle them. I think there comes a point in time where the superintendent's got to make a recommendation. Well, actually, the superintendent doesn't have to make a recommendation. The superintendent can remove them. So, but the short answer to your question, Beth, is no, that's not the intent of it. If a coach says something that's not necessarily what they would say in front of their mother, but if they continue, and I think there are different degrees, there's a whole lot of difference in my mind in that word and some other words. I mean, I just think we need to expect the expectation. It's not about punishment, it's about the expectation in my mind that, you know, a lot of people say things that they get mad, they say things, but if you're going to do it, close the door and say it to your coaches. Don't say it in front of your kids so that you can't discipline them, because it's hard for me to discipline a kid for saying something in practice if I've just said it or said it in front of somebody's mama and she's down there in the principal's office. So it's not, I hope that committee never meets, to be quite honest. And when I told Angela that Chief Human Resources Officer was going to be the chair of it, she knows it doesn't meet. So, you know, if there's an incident with a coach using inappropriate language, I would hope the principal would say, hush. You know. But if it continues, I think it's just like a teacher saying something in class. I don't think there's a difference. Kids don't change because it's 3:30. I mean, whether they're sitting in English class or they go to football practice or basketball practice, it's the same kid. So I think whatever standard we would have had, we wouldn't send that teacher if the English teacher said that, but the principal would sure talk to them. So that's, I don't know, I feel like I'm bad.
One thing I noticed in here just now about under supervision, that at no point can a student or students be left unsupervised. I mean, just little things like that, I think that these are the reasons that we need to have something that is agreed upon that sets expectations, because if you have a coach that's taught for, or coached for, 10 years, 20 years, or whatever, they know not to leave students unattended or athletes unattended, but it's happened. But you might have a new one this year, never taught before, might be in a tough situation that's come up unexpectedly, but they have read this and they understand that at no time should I leave my, students unattended, my athletes my team unattended. So I mean, just, you wouldn't think that's important until that group is left unattended and something happens and you're like, well, you should have known not to leave them unattended, and you would think that's just a given, but it's not.
No, it's not, and I'll be honest with you, I would not have put that in there had it not been for an incident that wasn't related to athletics. We had a teacher that was 1 minute and 40 seconds late to duty. The kid got hurt and the insurance company settled it. Wasn't that she didn't go to duty, she was 1 minute and 40 seconds late.
you know, we're talking about the supervision thing, but I've seen a lot of times in the past where some parents don't even come get the kid. I've seen kids sitting at school till 10 p.m. at night. I sat there with a bunch of them waiting for them to come. Is it the same thing for principals during the regular school day? I see a lot of kids still sitting at school at night waiting for rides.
And that's one of the old rules. One of the rules is that a coach cannot leave a student alone after practice. That was one of the rules.
Or you had to drop them off in case of police department.
Then it changed. It said, then it went to if you waited 2 hours, you could drop them off at the KC.
But then they said you can't put them in your
But now you
car.
can't put them in your
Y'all
car.
heard that
that's
one?
what
I would say one of
No,
them.
Okay,
no,
y'all
you
get
couldn't
them
put them in your car,
in.
we would call.
That is a that we do have that, that is an issue. Kids not getting picked up, and some have, you know, their parents aren't on the way. So it's not like, sometimes they're even coming, so. But there, yeah. Can't take them to the police department.
I don't know, back in the old days when you could take them home, we just loaded them up, took them home.
Many times.
It was probably a liability, but we were stupid and wanted to go home, so.
But now a coach cannot take a student home. Correct?
That's probably not the best thing for them from a liability standpoint. If they took a child home, they would be liable. And I don't think in any circumstance you ought to have a male teacher or coach taking a female student home, but and I wouldn't want to look, because I'm sure we got a lot of coaches who try to help a lot of kids, so.
Well, I know, and I'm just asking. I didn't know what that came up. I didn't know
Well,
what.
the thing of it is, the way things are today, just because it's a male and a female, I mean, it's just as bad either which way. I mean, things have changed so drastically. I mean, that's not just what you're avoiding. You got to avoid any contact.
You're absolutely right, and thank you so much for making me relive last week, Mr. Bingham. That happens too. So,
We had a policy that if you were gonna take a kid home, you had to have another teacher with you, and two of you went, rather than one.
The Lexington 2 policy, it's in the policy manual, says 2 staff members and permission from the principal.
And I think it's a good idea, let's get some expectations and all that on paper, but let's also remember to be appreciative, and I just have to say this for mine and Cindy's behalf, having us done this for years, that we've got to remember to also make sure that our coaches do feel appreciated for their time, because I think, Kevin, you've coached baseball, Bud, you've coached, you know, Little League, all that. I think if every coach we've got in our district, and we look at our coaching salary schedule, and then they put down the number of hours they're spending with our children after school, at games, on fundraising, on everything else, these coaches aren't getting paid but pennies on the dollar. I mean, they're not even close to like minimum wage, and they're not asking for it. I mean, they're truly doing it because they love our kids, and you know, so I just want to make sure that we're not just trying to beat up coaches, that we're holding them up, but definitely I agree, Christina, setting those expectations, because we do have younger people coming in and they may not know, well, hey, okay, maybe I shouldn't leave somebody, you know, alone, or leave them after school waiting on a parent or whatnot.
Which is another issue that also for being appreciated. You said before that at middle school or high school, that a teacher, that a principal has to be at games after school. Went to middle school volleyball playoffs on a Tuesday, Thursday, and a Saturday, not a principal inside. And we had 2 teams to make playoffs, and neither set of principals were there.
Any teachers there?
Well, the coach,
Home or away?
away, Swansea, Swansea, yeah, well, I'm just saying, I know we went to Swansea, and I know we went to Pine Ridge. And the two teams that made it was Northside and Fulham.
Have we ever recognized coaches in the past? No, I mean, not just for winning a region or whatever, I'm just talking about recognized coaches, like we they're teachers, but just
Principal
coaches.
recognition, I
You've
don't
seen
know.
it.
Here,
That would be
I'm
a
talking
great
about
thing
the
to
board.
do if we don't, because they do put a tremendous amount of time into these kids and, I mean, my goodness, they do so much.
So you should break down about an hour.
Oh, it's nothing, yeah, when you break it, yeah, you don't do it for the money. You don't.
And on that, I understand the liability part, but that 40%, that might be tough. I think a lot about spring sports. If you got tennis or golf,
Yeah, maybe two.
you got to have, if you're gonna have a 40% policy, you got to have 3 or 4 coaches to even have an assistant. You know, if they qualify like this, a lot of times in baseball,
most
you got
important
a
is the
head coach and
head coach.
assistant. So you might have to go to the teachers if we put a number, because a lot of teams only have 2 coaches.
Maybe 40% of the total coaching staff of the school.
So you're
Well,
saying,
you said
your scenario, you
50%
say
you got it covered.
one could be an employee, one not.
Because your head coach has got to be. So one other, if you only had 2, because your head coach has got to be, so 50% would cover it, no matter what.
Coach, they just go out and find somebody that's really.
But you know, that's just what I'm looking at.
I mean, I think honestly, this is a great
Good
start,
start.
and I think it's a good, I mean, it's a good, you know, couple-hour discussion would be, I think, real appropriate for whatever snow day we pick in January, because it always seems to snow when we pick a day in January to have a workshop. But I mean, you know, there's a lot of little details that we could get. And, you know, Cindy's right, some of it should be board policy, and some of it should be a manual. Thank you, Dr. James.
You're quite welcome.
There are things you don't, you like, you got the amount of the fee in here, but we've already set
That's in
fees
the
somewhere
policy.
else. So you just, they got to pay the participation fee in accordance with policy, and then we only change it in one spot whenever we change it. We don't have to change it
And
multiple places in
And
the
that's,
policy.
and that's another thing we look at,
Yeah,
the fee, I mean, because there's so many poverty kids that are playing sports. I know some that are making payments, and I know some that are being paid by
well,
others.
the thing about that, Kevin, is
Yeah.
there, we gotta get to the point, and I used to, Jim met with the 2 athletic directors, and for about the last, well, since school began, I've been meeting with the 2 athletic directors, and my whole goal is the fact that we start to come together as a district, we kind of have an idea what's going on. If we follow the policy, there's provisions for about everything. There's one person that can make a determination about athletic fees for kids of poverty in this district. Superintendent. It's the only person. And the board could vote to change the policy, but the policy doesn't even give the board the authority to do it. Principal can't change it, the athletic director can't change it, the coach doesn't change it. So if there are kids out there that can't, the way the policy is written, the process is the coach and the athletic director talk to the superintendent and say, this is the situation with this kid. And by doing that, you're following the policy. The coach isn't breaking the policy. Right now, the policy in this district says you will pay the $75 before having anything to do with the team. Don't work out, don't practice, don't show up, don't nothing. No provision for a payment plan. The problem is when we don't follow the policy, or we've got a policy that the mass won't follow. I mean, but there is a provision to do that. Now, what I'm told our principal is they all need to sit down and read board policy, because that's our playbook. I mean, you have you know exactly what you can do in this job and in all their jobs based on reading that board policy.
Well, the reason for that is, for the most part, the participation fee is paid for the insurance for the athlete.
That's exactly what it does.
So if they're not paying it, then that means we're fronting
That's exactly right.
to pay for their insurance for them to play.
Well, can we do this too, Dr. Jones, and, I mean, not necessarily about the next meeting, which is in like 2 weeks, but maybe within a month prior to the email to, can someone on your staff just pull out all the board policies that are specific to athletics that we can be reading in conjunction with this? Do you see what I'm saying? Not just
Can
general.
somebody do that, Dawn?
You know what I'm saying? Anything that says, okay, athletic fees or is policy BBYZ or whatever, and then, you know, anything that's specific athletics, that we can have what is already our policies to read in conjunction with this and have those about a month before we have that workshop, then
But
we might
technically,
get
you
some of
don't want
them.
that all in one documentation. It shouldn't be spread out everywhere. It should be all in this policy right here.
But if we get her to pull them out, then we know it's already in our policies and we can see perhaps about combining them, is what I'm saying. We can actually make it pretty useful if we all have a month before we go into that workshop to pair that with this.
Can we have?
Because it is spread out.
Can we have whatever is in this proposed document that we got tonight? Anything that's already policy highlighted and sent back to us, so we know it can't, like,
Just
it's
know
already,
that you're-
I don't know.
You stretch my computer skills, huh? Don't make-
Yeah, you gotta highlight. No,
I
I'm just
actually can't do
asking
it.
someone, because we don't wanna.
Well, it's just
I
like
thought we changed that. Well,
Kevin's asking about that in policy,
But that might not be-
JQ's,
we might not be able to do that.
fees, fines, and charges. It gives, yeah, I actually can't highlight. Extracurricular activities such as athletics and band, are not exempt for the school level waiving of fees, but a reduction of fees or a waiver can be considered on a case-by-case basis by the superintendent. That's policy JQ. So a principal can waive some fees for pupils in poverty. Pupils in poverty is the old free reduced lunch. So your policy has a list of kids that you can waive and kids you can't. If they aren't a pupil in poverty, they automatically don't qualify. They've got to pay. If they're people in poverty, they have to pay extracurricular activities such as band or athletics. But the superintendent can override that on a case-by-case basis. So there's provision in the policy for a group of kids who are the poorest kids, if we follow the policy.
That's why I say, like on this, we know that policy, because it shouldn't be in this, and then everything's together in one policy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The board policy would be in this, and that's going all.
I've tried to do better, Kevin. It took me forever to type this. Tanet's laughing. She laughed at me every day typing this thing.
You got it trained pretty well.
No, we need to keep them. We want to look at them.
And we keep it, look at these.
Certainly, I mean, I would hope you'd write a draft on it. After I sent it to Danette, she ran it. I forgot the watermark of the draft, but it's certainly not a policy, and there's certainly not any, I don't have any copyright laws on it, so.
So where is it that we're asking administration to move forward, what we do with this?
I think we said, or at least I asked, could we get all the policies that mention anything about athletics sent to us so we can look at it in conjunction with this? And then Christina asked Dr. James to go in and highlight this document and resend it to us.
We don't have to highlight it. We can just get a document.
Or we can just get documents.
Cross-reference.
And then we set a good block of time in January to delve deeper into this and what should be in a manual, what should be in a policy, what should be in a, whatever, administrative rule or.
And Don and I have been talking, let's bring sometime in February, maybe the first weekend in March. Don and I would like to to sit with the board like we did last year, because I think we've got some information that we'd like to bring to the board that will take a little bit of time. So that may be the time to do that. I don't think you all.
Well, that's what's for like January workshop.
You
I'll
may
refer
want to do
a
it
January
differently,
meeting.
but we want to.
No, I meant like a workshop time, like we did last year, where we
Yeah.
actually sit in our jeans and
Yeah.
can eat on camera.
Well, we got some other things that we won't bring to you in that, you know, I'm talking a lot about. So, Christine, I actually do have this on my computer, and I actually do understand it. It's always good if you act as if you don't know anything, people don't expect very much from you. So, I actually do know how to highlight that, even though I like for Danette to do it. So I will try to get that done for the policies, and we'll kind of move forward. And, you know, again, there's nothing special about that. I tried to read to make sure I wasn't contradicting a board policy, read what other people have written, kind of think about it from a liability standpoint and a coaching standpoint, and put it together. But my number one concern was, Bud, just making sure that I answered your motion
Yes,
as a starting place. So.
Thank you.
All right, we ready to move on?
Yes, sir. We've been asked about property matters. One of the things before we go into talking with Don, that I would, we brought this up, I brought this to the board one time before. I would like to suggest to the board that we probably need to start thinking in terms of maybe tearing down some old buildings. We've turned in our facilities report. Jim's turned in the report on vacant buildings to the state. Most of the people that have been on the board for a long time, you know that if we have buildings that are usable in the district and they're unoccupied, if you have a charter school come into the district, we have to allow them access to that building by law. So I think that we've got some buildings that are empty, and Granby didn't teach us anything, is the fact that it will attract less than popular clientele and turn into a mess. So I think the board probably needs to think about disposal of some of those buildings. We may want to think in terms of some green space. I told Mr. Bingham the other day, and any time I've ever dealt with school property, when you're trying to get rid of school property, it's not worth anything. When you're trying to buy property, it's worth millions of dollars. So it may be that we want to just tear down and clean up some things. And I know Don had talked with the city maybe about the Taylor property, and I think that in and of itself is a good piece of property to have as a green space in that neighborhood. So just food for thought. That may be one of the things that we want to start looking at in terms of property with the buildings that we have, not letting them get to the point where they're in disrepair, where they're to the point where we've got people staying in them or creating hazards and that kind of thing. So just food for thought. Also, Mr. Summers, I think that was one of your items. So anything you can ask, Don can answer. I put your name out there, I mean, anything you ask, he can answer, I promise you.
Well, but we do need to be careful not asking.
Right.
Anything
That'd be
that might
right,
be
yes.
Yeah, that'll be the-
privileged at this time.
Yeah.
I feel real leery about it.
Just be careful that any discussion doesn't involve properties that may be under negotiation or that would otherwise be best handled in our normal executive sessions.
I mean, that would, my question would, you know, I think what Bill just said would be executive session questions, I think.
And we'll have an update for you on all.
You answered what you just mentioned too about the properties, the updates. You know, I've still got a couple people, one that lives in that area over there talking about Taylor. You know, we've talked about Taylor property.
I'm I'm gonna be honest with you, but if the board had asked me for a recommendation, I think Taylor would be well served for us to tear that property down and let the city use that as green space. It may be that you could do like a dollar lease, and then the board would still have the property if they needed it, but you would resolve an awful lot of concern from people in that neighborhood as to what was gonna happen with it, and it would be a good use, so.
And I would say this too, I don't think we have a problem if any of you want to come to me individually and talk to me about any of the properties outside of executive session. I don't have a problem talking to you about those. And I would hope that the board doesn't have a problem with us discussing those further than what we did in the executive session, if someone has specific questions.
Well, I know we're not gonna take action tonight, but I don't understand why we couldn't take action on that.
We can bring it to the board on
Next meeting,
meeting, yes, ma'am.
get it started, get it done.
Well, you've already got it in your CPI, but.
Yes.
All we've got to do is approve it. Yeah.
And
But I would hope we could, these companies that are demolishing Brantley, I mean, they drug their feet and drug their feet and drug their feet. We don't want that to turn into the same thing. We need somebody that's gonna get it down and get it gone.
yeah, it was supposed to have been finished by October 10th, I think it was. So they missed it by a little bit here, but they're getting close to being finished. And, we have liquidated damages in there. We wanted to go after them for that. I don't know how much of an advantage it would be for us to do that, but I would agree with you. In fact, we got onto them pretty hard because they were sitting idle, not even on site.
You gotta be real careful with that, because liquidated damages, we don't have the authority to impose a penalty. So you gotta show how you really actually had damages, and that's very difficult to do. Just the fact that they took longer, because you're not using it, you're not planning for anything. I just know that's a tough, tough fight.
And I would also say that we told you, I got permission from you to do an RFP for realtors, and we received those yesterday, so we want to approve those and hopefully have a recommendation for you at the next board meeting. So if you want to list some properties, you can do that. If you want to buy some properties through our own realtor, you can do that, so.
Who's the committee on that? Are we hiring more than one?
Well,
One dedicated one or what?
there's only one that submitted the whole thing.
Oh, I guess that's an easy choice then.
I don't really want that,
No.
maybe I should have said that. Anyway,
There's no minute to.
It didn't mean anything so long ago.
we're gonna be negotiating with that person, or that company, probably on fees and all that. That's the big thing. I was surprised, I expected three.
Is there any other things on property, Bud? You said the you wanted to talk about it publicly.
Well, I know the way Dr. James worded it is like, okay, then.
He can't discuss what he wants to discuss now.
Okay. All right, so we move on.
Okay.
Discussion.
Excuse me, and I might add, when I asked you earlier, there was no executive session tonight.
Yeah.
And I was thinking there would have been an executive session that.
I know your request said you wanted to talk about it publicly. You
Well-
specifically put publicly in that request, so I figured it was something we'll talk about in the open session.
Okay. There's a follow-up, but I'll leave it.
Discussion on succession plan. This was again, Mr. Summers' item that he wanted to talk about the district succession plan for employees. So, what are the questions?
The thing I would
Can I just interject something here? What my follow-up was, I sent another email. These were things that could have, a couple of these items could have been delayed. I mean, I wasn't, I mean, it wasn't like we had to talk about them all tonight, and
Thank goodness, because I got to be at the airport at 5 a.m.
No, and I apologize. I appreciate, you know, Mr. Bingham putting them on the, you know, on the agenda, and I will choose my words more carefully next time, and then I will, again, my intentions were these were just things, the succession plan. I've talked to a couple of board members about that, and I've also, going back, well, today, a year ago, was election night, and several of us were elected, and I had, I don't want to say campaign promises, but there were goals that I had as a candidate, and listening to the people, a lot of the people who had hopefully cast a vote for me. And so some of these items, not particularly the succession plan, but the next item, I'll jump ahead, was regarding how our district representation, how we're elected. And I've done a little homework, sat in on some sessions, and looking at how other districts elect board members. There's 85 districts, plus or minus, in our state, and over half either have single districts or they have some hybrid. And I'm not saying I'm advocating for that. I'm just saying at some point, and it could be at a workshop, I'd like for us to have discussions regarding that matter. And so the latter two items that were the last two items that were on there that I had sent in the email to Bingham, Mr. Bingham, on was the succession plan, was to begin the discussions on the succession plan, and then two, discussions as far as how our representation is selected for our district. If that's something that's come up in the past, I don't know. Everybody may be totally happy with the way that we elect board members. I just feel like applying fair voice and fair representation across our district. Our district is you know, we're not, you know, I say we're trying to be of one voice, but we're all different backgrounds. And I just felt like that there was an opportunity, when that opportunity would present itself, that we would have conversation in regards to how we do, how our district is elected. I don't know anything from as far as the political process. I don't understand all of that. You know, Mr. Bingham, you and I had a conversation a good while back about that. And
we don't set that. That's set by the legislature.
I understand. I know there would be more to it than just saying this is what we want to do. And so that's all I was at. Those latter two items, I apologize. I didn't mean to lengthen the agenda, but those can be discussed at a later meeting or workshop.
One of the things I'd say, Mr. Summers, is that the overall plan of this district, I think you've got some really good people in this district office and in schools that have the best interest of this district, who want to be in this district and who plan to stay in this district, who are not nearly as old as Don and I. Good number of those folks are sitting in this room, and they're extremely good at their job. I would argue that you can look in any of those 80 whatever school districts, and you look at these people in this audience, you won't find job-alike people that are better at their job than the ones here, and they've still got lots of years left on their career, and they want to be here. So I think from that standpoint, the board is in a good place. I think we've hired well with young people. I think the big board's biggest issue in succession is the fact that you got an old superintendent and an old assistant superintendent. I was talking about Dixon, Don. I mean, that's kind of where you are.
Ladies over here, right, looking at you.
nice to this crowd. No good deed goes unpunished, but I do think you're in really good shape.
But I was glad to, get kind of back to the workshop format and be able to have some open, more discussion, like on the two things we discussed tonight. Because, when we're having 1 million people, it's hard to do all that in the audience. And so I appreciate you bringing the first two items. And on the succession plan, I didn't know what you wanted there, but I was just going to say, and Dr. Cooper, we may still do this, but I was thinking succession, like you and I, Bud and I had a conversation on that, more from like the greater district type of how are we going to be filling these administration slots and things later on in schools, and are we still doing things like, gosh, it's been years ago where we reached out to like some key elementary teachers who seem to be like leaders, and did we have like a class form or something about let's train you up and see
We
if you
have
might
a
want to
cohort
work?
going on now,
We're-
right, and it's primarily APs, but we are discussing inviting other teacher leaders who aren't working on their administrative certification.
We began bringing
We've
the
been doing
assistant
that
principals in
several years.
at all levels
Mhm.
3 years ago.
Right.
And they meet every cohort day.
But I think some teachers used to get invited to, because I remember
When
an
I,
elementary
my
school
first year,
teacher.
I taught class, yeah.
Yeah, but it was some teachers that came and they were like, oh, I got invited to be in
And
like
some
the
of them
assistant principal
did.
thing, and they went and got their assistant principal degree and all that kind of stuff after that, so.
Mhm. Right, we did have that, and then, of course, it was just me at that point. But then what we focused on was those folks who had their degree or were within a reasonable period of time of obtaining it. You know what I mean?
But I was thinking like,
We're at the point,
Yeah.
excuse me, now where we have this ongoing AP, it is for growth capacity, and we are considering inviting and opening up for teacher leaders. The thing about that is most of our teacher leaders are leading cohorts also at this point, so it's being discussed.
I just think like,
I
as,
agree.
when I saw, and maybe this wasn't where you were going with it, but to me, I know that we're about to hit, as you know, Dr. Cooper, I mean, nobody's wanting to go in administration anymore, just like they're not wanting to go in the classroom, they're not wanting to be superintendents, they don't want to be there. But like, so if I'm just sitting around teaching my little English classroom, and I think I'm a pretty good teacher, and I love doing it, but then all of a sudden my principal walks in one day and says, hey, Dr. Cooper called up from the district office and says, look at people who might really make good principals one day, or assistant principals, why don't you think about, going and getting, more of like an encouragement outreach to say, hey,
I
we've
see that.
identified you, we think you're good, go work on this, and then that way, we bring on,
I still think
okay.
Along the same lines, are you working and doing anything with people that are already certified but can't get into administration in this district? Are you bringing those people along? Are you telling them there's shortfalls? Are you doing anything to work with those kids that already have credentials in administration?
not as a particular class, Ms. Kessler, but through their professional development plan, their annual professional growth plan, that should mirror the school site plan, that should support the principal plan. Those things should be identified. So we do not have a class for folks who have already attained their, I'll say it like this, they need to be recommended. And right now, the AP cohort is mandatory, it's required. There are certain people in there who would, I'm of the opinion that an assistant principal role is a grooming spot. You know, it should not be
But
for
it shouldn't
life,
be.
but there are exceptions.
I mandated that the assistant principals come together to meet because what I found when I came here, what I thought I was seeing is the fact that we had assistant principals that didn't understand law or finance or budgeting or scheduling, or they knew one area, and a lot of them, that area was discipline, and all the inner workings were things that they weren't aware of. And so that's what we started. Now, the group that you talk about, Ms. Kessler, may be part of the succession plan, is that we start a cohort for those people who do have certification in administration and are interested in actually doing that, because we got several groups of folks. We got a group that has the certification and who would like to go into administration. We got a group that has the certification and could care less about going into administration because it's not always what they think it is. So maybe that's a part of the plan that we're missing, that we need that cohort so you can be honest with us and say, these are the things you need to work on, things you need to do.
These assistant principals shouldn't be hired to make the principal look good,
Right.
and they're being told that. That principal should help make that assistant principal look good to give them opportunities to move up. But assistant principals shouldn't be told, well, you're hired to make your principal look good.
They should support the mission of the
As
principal. mission
support,
of the
yes,
school.
but not to make that principal look good.
But-
No, and that's the mentality that I hope we get away from
Yeah.
for everything we do, because it's amazing how much gets done when nobody cares who gets the credit.
Absolutely.
Amen.
The specific request was to talk about the strategies for seeking key, short, and long range position replacements.
I think that's what was just explained to us, and so that was super helpful.
It will.
Yeah. Some of those things I didn't know about, so.
Yeah, they
appreciate
don't.
that.
Sure.
Anything else? Bud, you've already covered your, next item, you said? Is that what,
Yes.
you kind of hit both of them at the same time, so we move on to announcements. We got a Teacher of the Year reception at the next board meeting, November 21st. It'll be at the reception 6:15, and then the meeting is at 7 o'clock. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned. Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Adjourn.